$3,000 billion at risk. The global supply chain is hyperventilating. Alert level red at the Rio Grande. Port Laredo is at a breaking point. 10,000 troops, mobilized in less than 24 hours. The peso fluctuates violently like a seismograph in an earthquake. Factories in the Bajío corridor are holding their breath. This is not just a trade dispute. This is economic siege warfare. The target? Mexico's sovereignty. The weapon? A 25% tariff blanket. But the defense is already active. President Claudia Sheinbaum has drawn a line in the sand. No submission, only reciprocity. If the U.S. hits, Mexico hits back. The strategy is Plan Mexico. The shield is national production. The border is now a militarized zone of commerce. Every truck is a chess piece. Every container is a negotiation tactic. The world watches in stunned silence. Will the North American economy fracture? Or will sovereignty prevail under pressure? Support the National Guard securing our border right now. Subscribe to stay informed on this developing crisis. Like this video if you stand for national dignity. Prepare for the briefing. This is the reality on the ground. The sheer scale of the economic machinery currently under threat is difficult to visualize without understanding the technical layout of the North American industrial complex. We are talking about a bilateral trade relationship that exceeds $800 billion annually. A colossal flow of capital and goods that functions like a singular, integrated circulatory system. When a threat of a 25% tariff is introduced into this delicate ecosystem, it does not act merely as a tax. It acts as a mechanical obstruction, a clot in the arteries of global commerce that causes immediate, systemic shock. The panic referenced in the headlines is not emotional, it is logistical. It is the sound of thousands of just-in-time supply chains snapping simultaneously. To understand the Mexican defensive position, we must first analyze the battlefield itself. The ports of entry, the World Trade Bridge in Laredo, Texas, and its counterpart in Nuevo Laredo, Tamaulipas, represent the busiest commercial land crossing in the Western Hemisphere. Every single day, over 14,000 commercial trucks cross this specific point. These are not just vehicles, they are rolling warehouses, carrying the lifeblood of the automotive, aerospace, and agricultural sectors. The threat of a tariff war turns this bustling hub into a potential graveyard of rotting produce and rusting steel. The immediate reaction on the ground is paralysis. Logistics managers, customs brokers, and fleet operators freeze, unsure if the cargo loaded in Guanajuato will be profitable by the time it reaches Detroit. President Sheinbaum's administration has deployed a strategy that can be best described as asymmetric economic defense. The concept is rooted in the understanding that while the United States is a larger economy, its vulnerabilities are specific and geographically concentrated. The tariff panic is a two-way street. By identifying the U.S. agricultural exports that rely heavily on Mexican buyers, specifically yellow corn and soy, Mexico holds a tactical counter-battery capability. The message sent from the National Palace was not one of desperation, but of calculated reciprocal targeting. This is the essence of modern sovereignty, the ability to inflict equal economic cost to deter aggression. The arsenal at Mexico's disposal involves more than just retaliatory tariffs. It involves the Plan Mexico, a comprehensive framework aimed at strengthening the domestic market and reducing reliance on volatile external partners. This is a long-term fortification of the national economy. It envisions a Mexico that is not merely a manufacturing backlot for foreign powers, but an industrial powerhouse with its own internal demand and strategic autonomy. The deployment of this plan is accelerated by the current crisis, forcing a rapid maturation of domestic supply chains and a diversification of trade partners to include Asian and European markets, bypassing the northern bottleneck. However, the most visible element of this confrontation is the physical security operation at the border. The narrative that Mexico is passive in the face of cross-border crime has been dismantled by the deployment of 10,000 members of the National Guard and the Army to the northern frontier. This is a tactical maneuver designed to neutralize the pretext of the tariff threat. By securing the perimeter and clamping down on the illegal flow of fentanyl and migrants, the Mexican state removes the political ammunition used against it. This is sovereignty in action, securing one's own borders to protect one's own economic interests, not to please a foreign power, but to ensure the stability of the nation. The detection phase of this crisis began months ago, with intelligence pointing towards a shift in U.S. trade policy. The Mexican Secretariat of Economy and Foreign Relations experts have been monitoring the rhetoric and the administrative motions in Washington. The radar picked up the signals, a return to protectionist aggression. The response was not panic, but preparation. Legal teams, trade negotiators, and economic analysts began wargaming the scenarios. What happens if the automotive sector is hit? What happens if the remittance flows are targeted? Every scenario was mapped, and a countermeasure was drafted. The intelligence apparatus also identified the specific pain points for the U.S. economy. The integration of the North American auto industry is so deep that a tariff on Mexican parts is effectively a tax on American consumers and American car manufacturers. Components cross the border up to 8 times during the production process. A 25% levy applied at each crossing would make the final product unaffordable. collapsing demand in the U.S. market. This data is the ammunition Sheinbaum used in the high-stakes phone negotiations. It was a confrontation of facts versus rhetoric, where the technical reality of supply chain economics served as Mexico's shield. We are seeing a new type of diplomacy emerge, one that is less about cocktail parties and more about crisis management. The Mexican government's communication strategy has been disciplined and unified. There are no leaks, no contradictory statements. The message is consistent. Mexico is a partner, not a subordinate. This unity of command is essential in a crisis. It prevents the adversary from exploiting internal divisions. The panic is contained within the markets. It is not allowed to infect the decision-making process of the executive branch. The role of the private sector in this defense cannot be overstated. The Consejo, Coordinador, Empresarial, and other industrial chambers are operating in lockstep with the government. They are providing real-time data on inventory levels, shipment delays, and contract cancellations. This economic intelligence allows the government to calibrate its response with surgical precision. If the U.S. threatens steel, Mexico knows exactly how much U.S. steel is imported for construction projects in Monterrey and can threaten a pause on those purchases. It is a high-stakes game of leverage, played with commodities and contracts instead of missiles. Let us now move to the chronological unfolding of the confrontation. The tension began to spike noticeably in late 2024, following the U.S. election results. The rhetoric regarding invasions and tariffs shifted from campaign slogans to imminent policy threats. The markets reacted first. The peso depreciated, hitting psychological barriers of 21, then 22 to the dollar. This volatility is the artillery barrage that precedes the main assault. It weakens the defenders' purchasing power and creates domestic anxiety. But the Mexican Central Bank and the Finance Ministry held the line, using reserves and interest rate adjustments to absorb the shock. January 20, 2025, the inauguration in Washington serves as the signal flare. The executive orders are drafted. The threat becomes formal, a blanket tariff, unless impossible demands are met immediately. In Mexico City, the lights in the National Palace burn late into the night. The cabinet is in continuous session. The strategy is finalized. There will be no public begging. There will be a counter-proposal rooted in dignity. The reciprocal tariff list is prepared, a document that identifies billions of dollars in U.S. exports that will face immediate taxation if the U.S. proceeds. February 1, 2025. The pressure cooker whistle is screaming. The ultimatum is days away. Reports from the border indicate a run-on-the-bank style panic in logistics. Companies are trying to rush shipments across before the deadline. The bridges are clogged, trucks idle, for 12, 14, 16 hours. The exhaust fumes choke the air over Laredo and Tijuana. This is the visible face of trade panic. Drivers run out of water. Perishable goods begin to spoil in the heat. The economic waste is mounting by the hour. The friction is palpable. February 3, 2025. The tactical climax. President Sheinbaum picks up the phone. The conversation is not released to the public in full, but the outcome is clear. It is a standoff. She presents the facts, the National Guard deployment, the seizure statistics, and the reciprocal tariff list. She explains, calmly but firmly, that a trade war destroys both nations. The logic is undeniable. The U.S. president, facing pressure from his own agricultural and automotive lobbies who are terrified of the Mexican retaliation, agrees to a pause. The tariffs are suspended. The immediate threat is neutralized. This moment, the February pause, is a tactical victory for Mexican sovereignty. It proves that standing firm, rather than capitulating, yields results. The 10,000 troops moving to the border are not a concession. They are a sovereign assertion of control over national territory. Mexico decides where and when to deploy its forces, based on its own security needs, which happen to align with the de-escalation of the trade conflict. The narrative is reclaimed. Mexico is not doing this for the U.S. Mexico is doing this to protect Mexico from the chaos that invites foreign intervention. The deployment itself is a massive logistical undertaking. We are talking about the movement of motorized infantry regiments, National Guard battalions, and specialized customs units. They are equipped with non-intrusive inspection technology, gamma-ray scanners that can see through the steel walls of a shipping container in seconds. These units are deployed to strategic choke points, not just at the official crossings, but in the desolate stretches of the Sonoran Desert and the Tamaulipas brush where the cartels operate. The soldiers on the ground are the physical manifestation of the state's will. They are patrolling the riverbanks, setting up checkpoints on the federal highways leading north. Their mission is twofold: stop the flow of illicit goods that gives the U.S. an excuse to attack the economy, and protect the legitimate flow of commerce from cartel extortion. It is a war on two fronts. By securing the supply chain from criminal interference, they are also securing it from political interference. The panic described in the title is not just about money. It's about the uncertainty of livelihood for millions of families. In the maquiladora zones of Juarez, Tijuana, and Matamoros, workers wonder if the factories will close. These industrial parks are the engine of the northern economy. A 25% tariff would wipe out the razor-thin profit margins of these assembly plants overnight. The just-in-time model would collapse. Plants would shut down, unemployment would spike. This is why the defense of the trade agreement is a matter of national security. The response from the Mexican agricultural sector has been equally robust. Farmers in Sinaloa and Michoacan, who export billions in avocados, tomatoes, and berries, have rallied behind the government's stance. They understand that a tariff war is painful, but submission is fatal. If Mexico accepts a subservient role now, the demands will never stop. Today, it is tariffs. Tomorrow, it is energy sovereignty. The next day, it is water rights. The line must be drawn here, at the border of commerce. Technically, the panic also triggered a rush in the financial sector to hedge against currency risk. Corporate treasurers across Mexico scrambled to buy dollar futures, trying to lock in exchange rates before the potential crash. This creates a feedback loop that puts more pressure on the peso. The government's ability to project calm and control during the February negotiations was crucial in breaking this loop. As soon as the pause was announced, the peso rallied. The panic subsided, replaced by a tense vigilance. The Plan Mexico mentioned by Sheinbaum is the long-term answer to this volatility. It involves heavy investment in infrastructure, expanding the ports of Manzanillo and Veracruz to facilitate trade with other continents, upgrading the rail network to move goods internally more efficiently, and investing in renewable energy to attract high-tech investment that is less dependent on low-wage labor. It is a vision of an industrialized, self-sufficient Mexico that trades with the world on its own terms. The shock to the U.S. border trade was a wake-up call for American governors and mayors along the southern frontier. Leaders in Texas, Arizona, and California realized that their economies are inextricably linked to Mexico. When the bridge closes or slows down, their cities bleed money. The diplomatic pressure applied by these local U.S. officials on the White House was a direct result of Mexico's firm stance. They saw the reality of the reciprocal shield and realized they were in the blast zone. As we move into the aftermath of the initial confrontation, the saldo balance of the operation becomes clear. The tariffs were not implemented. The trade flows continue. The sovereignty of Mexico remains intact, but the alert level remains high. The 10,000 troops are still at the border. The trade negotiators are still at the table. The threat has not vanished. It has been postponed. The panic has evolved into a state of permanent readiness. This new reality requires a shift in mindset for every Mexican citizen. We can no longer take the stability of the northern relationship for granted. The economy must become more robust, more internal, more resilient. The support for national industries is now a patriotic duty. Buying HO in Mexico is not just a slogan, it is a strategic necessity to reduce vulnerability to external shocks. The technological aspect of the border defense continues to upgrade. Mexico is investing in biometric identification systems, license plate readers, and drone surveillance to ensure that the border is smart as well as secure. This technology allows for the rapid facilitation of legitimate trade while filtering out the illicit traffic that poisons the diplomatic relationship. It is a high-tech filter for sovereignty. The panic also highlighted the fragility of the semiconductor supply chain. Mexico is a growing player in the assembly and testing of these critical components. Any disruption at the border sends shockwaves through the global tech industry, affecting everything from smartphone production to fighter jet manufacturing. By holding this card, Mexico holds a key to the 21st century economy. The defense of the border is also the defense of the global digital infrastructure. We must also consider the energy dimension. Texas exports massive amounts of natural gas to Mexico. It powers the factories that build goods for the USA trade war that disrupts this flow would leave Texas producers with a glut of gas and no market, while stalling Mexican industry. It is a classic mutually assured destruction scenario economically. Mexico's reminders of this energy interdependence were subtle but effective during the negotiations. The psychological impact on the Mexican population has been significant. There is a renewed sense of nationalism, a feeling that the country is being tested and is standing tall. The defiance in the title is not about insolence. It is about dignity. It is the refusal to be bullied by a larger neighbor. It is the assertion that respect is a prerequisite for partnership. The U.S. border trade panic is a testament to Mexico's importance. You do not panic over something that doesn't matter. The U.S. panicked because Mexico matters immensely. The realization that the supermarket shelves in Chicago would be empty of produce, that the assembly lines in Detroit would halt, that the construction sites in Dallas would run out of steel, that is the source of the panic. Mexico proved its indispensable value simply by standing its ground. As we look to the future, the Plan Mexico will continue to unfold. We will see more investment in technical education, more support for small and medium enterprises, and a relentless focus on the rule of law. The security situation at the border will remain a priority, not because of foreign pressure, but because a secure Mexico is a prosperous Mexico. The crime groups that smuggle drugs and people are enemies of the state, and their neutralization is a sovereign imperative. The shock has passed, but the tremors remain. The lesson learned is that preparation is the only defense against uncertainty. Mexico must continue to diversify, to strengthen its internal market, and to maintain a professional, capable security force that can seal the border when necessary, not to keep people in, but to keep threats out and to regulate the flow of the nation's wealth. This narrative is far from over. The negotiations will continue, the threats may return, but the precedent has been set. Mexico will not fold. The panic may return to the markets, but it will not enter the national palace. There is a steady hand at the wheel, and a clear map for the future. The reciprocal shield is active. The radar is sweeping. The troops are on the line. The economy is bracing, but it is standing. This is the state of the nation, alert, defiant, and sovereign. The defiance is not an act of rebellion. It is an act of survival. And in the harsh landscape of geopolitics, survival is the only victory that matters.